For tab 6, I want you to see what data looks like if you have more than one trial. This is the data that we're going to see a lot more of in our full labs this year. And ultimately your IA, your internal assessment. You will need to have several different independent variable setups. So here we're measuring the force if we're stretching and springing different amounts. And then finding several different trials of that independent variable and then averaging them together. So here, I want to show you a couple different skills that are going to be slightly different, just workarounds on this app. So first of all, if you are doing anything in even increments, I just want to show you this cool trick that here I've already included 0.10 and 0.20, but I want this to go farther. I want to see all of the spring stretch data counting up in those even increments. So I'm going to select both of those. And then once I've selected both of them, either click, pause, click, or just wait and it will pop up, this fill menu. I'm going to fill so that the corners become squares instead of circles. Circles allow me to select what I want. Squares allow me to drag down something that's already started. And here, since I've already started this pattern, dragging this down is just going to extend that pattern. And that's so cool. Excel will recognize a variety of different patterns. Here, you just notice that we are counting by tenths and then extended that. And it would extend as far as we wanted. If we wanted to keep going, dragging that down, it would keep adding it in there if the squares were included. Now, I also want to calculate the average force here. Now, the force is only these trials 1 through 5. So to find the average force, in this case, I want to click on that cell, go to my formulas, auto sum, average. Now this average for me didn't pre-select data. It might have selected data for you and you can just adjust accordingly. But since it didn't pre-select anything for me, I'm just going to click on my first trial that I want to average at 2.7. And I'm going to ignore all these other number 1, number 2. I could do that if I wanted. But an easier thing to do is to just drag this corner so that it selects all 5 of my trials here. And then hit the check mark. And you should get an average force of about 2.9. If I click on that again or click pause, click, I should be able to get to this fill menu, turn the corners into squares, and then drag down to find my average force all the way down. Now, I want to graph this data, and specifically the data I want to graph is this spring stretch according to the average force. Now, it's kind of hard to do that on an iPad. If you're on a laptop right now, you can select your spring data here, and then just hold Control, or if you're on a Mac, I think it's Command, and then while you're holding that, select your average force. But here on an iPad, we need to do it in a slightly different, kind of annoying way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that data and then just click and hold. So all I did was I pre-selected the data and then I pressed down in the middle and held. So now it's kind of floating here. I'm just going to drag it down. You'll see it just moved all that data down with it. I'm going to do the same thing with the numbers here on this average force column. Click and hold so it's floating, and I'm going to drag it across like that. So now I have a situation where my independent variable, my spring stretch is first, my dependent, the average force, is second. And they are next to each other. So now I can select both of them at the same time, go up to my insert menu, insert a chart. That chart is an XY scatter. The XY scatter that I want is the dots. You see it's a very, very linear option. I want to add a line of best fit like I did in the last couple tabs. So layouts, scroll to the bottom, the one that has an equation to it, and there you have it. I can add a chart title and all this stuff later, but we showed that in the other video. Then what I want to show you here is if you want your data table to not be all cut up like this, you can actually, now that you've created this chart, just do the reverse process and drag these back to where they started. And I know this is kind of an annoying workaround. But now this remembers that data. It followed it back with it. So you have your chart and your data table is still intact.